but still clinging to my old work boots. Your truck was there beside the porch, but another one was there too. The kitchen window glowed so warm, like every other night before. Funny how a man can lose his whole world standing at his own front door. You froze the moment that you saw me. You slipped out without a word. The silence hit a whole lot harder than anything I could have heard. Wedding pictures line the hallway, frames we'd picked out years ago. Every smile hanging on that wall belonged to people I don't know. So I left my ring there on the table, right beside the life we made. Some promises are built forever, some just slowly fade away. I didn't scream, I didn't curse, there wasn't anything to prove. Sometimes the strongest kind of goodbye is simply choosing to leave. I loaded up my old half-ton. Didn't take much more than clothes. That front porch swing kept moving softly in the wind we used to know. Halfway down that gravel driveway, I look back one final time, not because I wanted you, just to leave the hurt behind. So I left my ring there on the table, right beside the life we made. Some promises are built forever, some just slowly fade away. You can keep the house and memories, every picture on the wall. Love ain't worth begging for when it isn't love at all. Months roll by like passing boxcars. Healing never comes overnight, but every sunrise found me stronger than the man who drove away that night. I learned a broken heart don't stay broken if you let tomorrow in. Yeah, I left my ring there on the table, but I found myself again. Some endings feel like losing everything till they become where healing begins. Now when I look back through those years, there ain't no bitterness inside, 'cause the best revenge I ever found was building a better life. And somewhere that old gold band still lies, but it doesn't belong to me anymore.
I was cleaning out the boathouse down by Beaver Lake, just outside of Rogers, Arkansas, when I found an old green tackle box covered in dust and spider webs. It belonged to my grandpa Eddie, best fisherman this town had known. Been gone near 15 summers now, but somehow that place still felt like home. Inside were lures and faded bobbers, a pocket knife worn smooth with age. Then underneath a bundle of line, I found an envelope tucked away. There was a photograph of Grandma June standing by the water in '58, and a little gold ring wrapped in paper with words scribbled on the page. It said, if you find this ring someday, don't wait too long to say what your heart's afraid to say. Life moves faster than a river runs, and tomorrow ain't promised to anyone. I almost lost your grandma once, too stubborn to tell her how I felt. Son, love's the only thing worth risking for. That note hit me like a bell. That night I drove across the county to a little house on Maple Street, where a girl I'd loved since high school days had nearly become a memory. We sat beneath her front porch light while crickets sang through the dark, and for the first time in my whole life, I spoke straight from the heart. And it said, if you find this ring someday, don't wait too long to say what your heart's afraid to say. Life moves faster than a river runs, and tomorrow ain't promised to anyone. Lost your grandma once, too stubborn to tell her how I felt. Son, love's the only thing worth risking for. That note hit me like a bell. 3 months later, down by the shoreline, where the water caught the evening glow, I slipped that old gold ring onto her hand and watched happy tears start to flow. Some treasures never come from the water, they're the ones hidden deep in your soul. Yeah, I found that ring someday.
every time I look at her smile, I thank him for holding on to that ring so long. Yeah, love was waiting in a tackle box all along.
The scoreboard lights were flickering above the 50-yard line. October wind rolled through the stands on a cold Nebraska night. I sat alone on the top row where I used to hear them cheer. Now the bleachers felt a little bigger with every passing year. There was a time I wore that jersey with my number on the back. Thought Friday nights would last forever underneath those stadium lamps. But life moves faster than a fastball, and stronger than your plans. One day you're chasing glory, next day you're shaking working hands. Now I punched the clock at sunrise at the grain mill by the tracks. Got 2 kids who wear my old cleats and a mortgage on my back. The mirror shows a little gray where the dark used to be, and the dreams I thought I'd lost are staring from the stands at me. My oldest boy ran on to the field wearing number 23. Same nervous smile I used to hide before the referee's whistle blew for me. And suddenly I understood what all those years were for. Some victories arrive much later than the ones you're keeping score. Give me one more season of sunsets and small town lights, one more harvest moon hanging over Friday night, one more chance to stand beside the people I call mine. 'Cause the best things in this life don't last forever, they just borrow time. One more season of laughter around the kitchen table, one more season of faith when life gets unstable. Every year keeps teaching me what matters most to hope. You don't count your life in trophies, you count it in the souls. The game was tied in the 4th quarter with 2 minutes left to play. My boy threw a pass down the field and the whole town lost its mind that day. The crowd erupted like thunder rolling across the plains. But what hit me harder was the pride running through my veins. Afterward we drove home slowly beneath the starry sky. He talked about the winning play while I just smiled and drove. Because someday he'll leave this town and chase a dream beyond these roads. And when he does, I hope he learns the thing I finally know. Give me one more season of sunsets and small town lights, one more harvest moon hanging over Friday night, one more chance to stand beside the people I call mine. 'Cause the best things in this life don't last forever, they just borrow time. One more season of laughter around the kitchen table, one more season of faith when life gets unstable. Every year keeps teaching me what matters most to hold. You don't count your life in trophies, you count it in the souls. The wheat turns gold and falls away, but Winter comes and spring returns again. The years keep rolling like a train, but every season leaves a gift behind. When the final whistle blows, I won't remember every score. I'll remember who was standing there when I walked through every door. So give me one more season of ordinary days, one more sunrise shining through the window's dusty haze, one more Sunday church bell echoing through the air, one more chance to tell my family just how much I care, one more season of memories still waiting to be made, one more season watching children slowly find their way. And when the good Lord calls me home beyond these fields of gold, I'll thank Him for the seasons more than anything I own. Grandpa's toolbox sat untouched for nearly 5 long years in the corner of the garage, collecting dust and memories. Rusty wrenches, bent up nails, receipts from '72, and 100 little pieces of a life nobody knew. One Saturday in early spring, I finally opened it, just looking for a socket set to fix a fence a bit. But underneath the bottom tray, folded tight and warm, was a hand-drawn map on yellow paper, weathered, stained, and torn. Across the top it simply said, for whoever finds this first, enlisted roads through Missouri and a dozen little towns, with circles drawn around old places I had never heard him name, and one short note beside the edge that only said, take the trip someday. So I loaded up my pickup and headed down the line, following that faded map, one county road at a time. The first stop was an old diner where a waitress smiled and said, your granddad used to stop right here every Thursday before dawn. And that map in Grandpa's toolbox wasn't leading me to gold, it was leading me through stories that had never been told. Every turn revealed a chapter, every mile revealed a man, and I realized how little we know about the lives behind our family names. One pin led to a schoolhouse where he fixed the furnace free, another to a farmhouse where he'd helped a widow keep her wheat. There was a church in Kansas where he built a handicap ramp, and a riverbank in Iowa where he rescued a boy from the current's grasp. No newspaper had ever written a single word about those days, no medals hung upon his wall, no headlines praised his name. But town after town I met folks whose lives he'd quietly changed, and each story painted someone bigger than I'd ever known. Yeah, that map in Grandpa's toolbox wasn't leading me to gold, it was leading me through kindness he never stopped to show. Every stop revealed a lesson, every road revealed the truth. The strongest people often leave their greatest work unseen. The final mark was house on a hillside overlooking fields of corn, where Grandpa used to watch the sunset when he felt tired and warm. There I found a small tin box buried underneath the stone. Inside was one last letter, written in his careful hand. It said, if you're reading this, remember, life ain't measured by what you own. It's measured by the people smiling because you helped them carry on. And if you ever feel forgotten or wonder what your life is worth, leave this world a little better than the day you found it first. And now that map hangs in my hallway, where I see it every day. And whenever I get lost, it still shows me the way. Every Tuesday at 6:15, she'd walk into Murphy's Cafe alone, order sweet tea and chicken pie, sit 3 tables from the window. I'd be there with my black coffee, pretending to read the local news. Truth was, I knew every little habit, every smile, every pair of boots. For 7 months I never spoke, just nodded when our eyes would meet. She'd leave $1 in the tip jar, always wave to everyone she'd see. Oh, Miss Betty caught me watching, laughed and said, boy, you'll never know if you keep falling in love every Tuesday without saying hello. 3 tables from the window, 3 steps too scared to take. I could rope a wild Mustang, but my heart was bound to break. Funny how the strongest hands can still tremble when love is near. Sometimes forever waits on one small word, the hardest one to hear. The next Tuesday I got there early, bought 2 slices of pecan pie. When she walked in, I pulled out the chair and somehow found the nerve to smile. She laughed and said, it's about time. I wondered how long you'd wait. I've been sitting 3 tables from the window, hoping you'd ask me on a date. 3 tables from the window, 3 steps I finally made. Turns out all
tremble when love is near. But one little chance can change your life when you choose courage over fear. Now every anniversary we stop by that little place, order pie and sweet iced tea, and smile at the empty space. Sometimes a shy young couple's there, looking just like we once did. So I quietly pay their check and leave before they notice it. 3 tables from the window, that's where our story starts. Not with fireworks or fancy words, just 2 ordinary hearts. Now our grandkids laugh when they hear how close we came to missing this, all because a country boy finally leaned in for a kiss. Yeah, love doesn't always arrive like thunder. Sometimes it waits 3 tables from the window.
On Cedar Street in Arkansas stood a little yellow house where Miss Ruth sat every evening when the sun was going down. She'd stitch beside the front porch swing with a basket at her feet, adding patches to a quilt nobody had ever seen complete. Some came from a soldier's jacket, some from a baby dress, some from church choir robes worn on Sundays at their best. Every scrap had someone's story sewn between the seams, like a map of all the lives that built that little community. For 30 years folks dropped off pieces of their past, a work shirt from the sawmill, a ribbon from a graduation cap. Nobody really knew what Ruth intended it to be, but she'd smile and say, "You'll understand eventually." Then one April night, a fire swept through downtown fast. The feed store, bank, and barber shop disappeared in ash. The town hall burned to the foundation, records lost in smoke, and with them went a century of stories people hoped they'd always hold. That's when she brought out the quilt on Cedar Street, spread it wide for everyone to see. Every patch a name, every thread a memory, every color telling where we'd been. When the photographs were gone, the old records disappeared, that quilt became the history we thought we'd lost that year. The mayor stood there speechless as she laid it on the floor. More than 2,000 pieces stitched from door to door. Children found their grandparents, old friends found younger days, entire generations hidden fabric she'd saved.
There was a square from the first schoolhouse, built in 1932.
A piece from a wedding tablecloth everybody knew. And when folks saw their stories there, something changed inside. They realized a town ain't buildings, it's the people tied together through time. That's what lived inside the quilt on Cedar Street. Every laugh and every defeat, every harvest, every storm, every dream, woven into something bigger than a single memory. When the photographs were gone, the old records disappeared, that quilt became the history we thought we'd lost that year. Miss Ruth passed away that winter at 94 years old. But before she left, she wrote a note, folded careful in the quilt's old folds. It said, the strongest threads are people, the cloth is only cloth. Take care of one another, and you'll never truly be lost. Now the quilt hangs in a museum built where the old town hall once stood. And school kids stop and stare a while, like every generation should. They see more than scraps of fabric, more than colors stitched with care. They see the heart of a small town story, still hanging there. Yeah, the quilt on Cedar Street still holds us all together. First snow hit the fence lines yesterday, dusting all the cattle trails in white. I was patching up a gate on the north side ranch when I saw her truck roll in at twilight. 3 years gone since she drove away, leaving nothing but a note and a ring. Now she's standing by the old windmill, like she never missed a thing. She said, I heard your mama wasn't doing well. She looked down at her hands, the same hands that used to hold mine tight, back when we made all our plans. The mountains stood silent in the distance, like they knew we had words left unsaid. And every mile she traveled since then was written in her eyes instead. Under this Montana sky tonight, the stars are burning clear and bright, like they never stopped believing we'd find our way through every lonely mile and every hard goodbye. this Montana sky tonight. Mama smiled when she walked through the door, like a prayer had finally come true. Coffee steamed on the kitchen table, and the whole room felt brand new. We talked until the moon climbed high, about the years we can't get back. Then she reached across and touched my hand, and somehow closed every crack. Under this Montana sky tonight, the stars are burning clear and bright, like they never stopped believing we'd find our way through every lonely mile and every hard goodbye. If love's a fire, ours never died. It just waited through the cold and time, and here we are beneath that endless light, under this Montana sky tonight. The wind still sings across the prairie grass, and tomorrow ain't promised to anyone. So I pulled her close and whispered low, I'm done running from what we've become. Under this Montana sky tonight, I can finally see my life, not in the dreams I chased too far away, but in the arms that held on through the fight. The mountains watch, the stars still shine, and for the first time the future feels right. Yeah, forever starts right here tonight, under this Montana sky tonight. Under this Montana sky tonight. The auction sign went up in June beside the county road, right where my granddad carved his name in a cedar fence post. 80 years of Oklahoma dirt, 3 generations deep, was gonna leave our family when that auctioneer would speak. The drought had hit us hard that year, then harder still the next. Bank notices stacked on the table like a pile of unpaid debts. I watched my father stare across those fields of dying grain, like a captain watching helpless while his ship sank in the rain. By auction day the whole town came, pickups lined the lane, neighbors leaning on the fences. Underneath the sky of gray, the tractors stood like soldiers, waiting for a final call. And every tool inside that barn held memories on its walls. The auctioneer climbed on the trailer, cleared his throat and smiled, started reading numbers fast, while Mama held back tears, and from the crowd old stepped up, folks I'd known my whole life through. And one by one they started doing something nobody expected them to do. When the auction bell rang loud that day, the town stood up instead of walking away. They bought the plows, they bought the trucks, then handed every piece right back to us. And I learned right there beneath those clouds, a man ain't rich because he's proud. He's rich because when times get rough, there's a town behind him strong enough. Mrs. Parker bought the combine that her husband used to run. The sheriff bought the cattle gates, the preacher bought a gun, not for keeping, just for saving what we thought was gone for good. Every bid became a promise written where hope once stood. Then old Hank Wilson raised his hand for the final piece of land. Silence fell across the crowd as he made his stand. He bought the acreage outright and turned toward my dad and said, "This farm belongs to your family. That's all that needs be said." When the auction bell rang loud that day, the town stood up instead of walking away. They bought the plows, they bought the trucks, then handed every piece right back to us. And I learned right there beneath those clouds, a man ain't rich because he's proud. He's rich because when times get rough, there's a town behind him strong enough. The rain arrived 3 days later, rolling in across the plains, like heaven heard the voices of folks carrying each other's pain. Some things grow better than wheat fields, some things run deeper than roots. And when the world starts breaking, there's people that pull you through. Now every year when harvest comes and combines roll beneath the sun, and I hear that auction bell again, echoing across the wind, not as a sound of losing ground, but proof that love still gathers round. And if this farm outlives my days, I'll thank that town in 1,000 ways. Yeah, the auction bell still rings somehow, and every golden harvest now. Out on the Carolina coast where the Atlantic meets the sand, there stood a lonely lighthouse built by weathered working hands. My daddy kept that beacon burning through every storm that came, while I dreamed of bigger cities and a life beyond the waves. Every night he'd climb those stairs with a lantern and a key, while cargo ships crossed dark horizons far beyond the sea. He'd say a light ain't measured by how far away it shines, it's measured by the lives it helps make it home alive. At 18 I left Hatteras with a suitcase and a plan, certain there was something greater waiting for me inland. I spent 20 years in boardrooms wearing polished shoes and ties, building things that look successful through everybody's eyes. Then one winter I got a call from a number I didn't know. The keeper's house was empty now, and Dad was gone. I flew back through a freezing rain to that familiar shore, and found his boots beside the door, like he just stepped out once more. I'm the lighthouse keeper's son, and it took me half a lifetime to learn where I came from. You can chase every distant skyline underneath the sun, but some lights keep guiding you long after they're gone. Through the fog and through the storms, through every road I wandered on, I'm the lighthouse keeper's son, and his light still leads me home. The town was planning to close the tower by the bay. Modern systems made it obsolete, or so the experts claimed. But as I walked those spiral stairs, I saw Dad's name carved deep beside 100 others who had kept watch over the sea. So I stood before the county board and made a different case. Said this lighthouse isn't concrete, steel and paint. It's every life that found the harbor when the ocean turned black, and somehow the whole room rose up and brought the old tower back. I'm the lighthouse keeper's son, and it took me half a lifetime to learn where I came from. You can chase every distant skyline underneath the sun, but some lights keep guiding you long after they're gone. Through the fog and through the storms, through every road I wandered on, I'm the lighthouse keeper's son, and his light still leads me home. Now every year on Father's Day, I climb those stairs alone, watch the beams sweep across the waves, and think about all I've come to know. The strongest men don't always build the tallest things you'll see. Sometimes they simply leave behind a reason to believe. Yeah, I'm the lighthouse keeper's son, and the older that I get, the more I understand. A good life ain't about the miles or money that you've won. It's about the people who become your guiding stars. Through the fog and through the storms, their lessons carry on. I'm the lighthouse keeper's son, and his light still leads me home. Yes, his light still leads me home. nailed to the gate. 5 rocky acres just outside Cheyenne. The barn leaned hard to the west wind, and the fences barely stood again. Everybody said, boy, don't buy that place. You'll spend your whole life chasing repairs. But I saw a porch where kids could laugh, and a future hanging in the air. I worked double shifts through the winter months, loaded feed and fixed old rigs. Every paycheck stretched like barbed wire, trying to make enough for little things. My wife planted flowers by the mailbox, though the ground was stubborn clay. She'd smile and say, give it some time, good things grow that way. All we had was 5 acres and a dream, a little faith and a lot of gasoline. More hope than money, more grit than luck, and an old red tractor that wouldn't quit. Yeah, life wasn't easy, but it felt right, building something under those Wyoming skies. Sometimes a man gets richer than he seems, with 5 acres and a dream. By year 5, the barn stood straight again. The pasture turned a healthy green. There were bicycles by the front porch steps, and little muddy boots by the screen. One evening I watched the sunset fall, with my daughter sleeping on my knee. And I realized every sacrifice had become exactly what I needed. All we had was 5 acres and a dream, a little faith and a lot of gasoline. More hope than money, more grit than luck, and an old red tractor that wouldn't quit. Yeah, life wasn't easy, but it felt right, building something under those Wyoming skies. Sometimes a man gets richer than he seems, with 5 acres and a dream. The world keeps telling you bigger is better, more land, more money, more things to own. But peace don't care about square footage. Sometimes it lives where love has grown. Yeah, we started with 5 acres and a dream. Now every board and field means something to me. Every scar on my hands, every long hard day helped build this life brick by brick. And when the stars come out above the plains and the porch light glows soft and clean, I thank the Lord for everything He gave me through 5 acres and a dream. Yeah, the best things I ever held in my hands were never things at all. "30 miles outside of Tucson, My old Chevy coughed and died on a lonely stretch of desert highway, under 100 miles of sky. The radio faded into static, the sun sank red behind the hills. I kicked the tire and laughed at my luck as the evening air turned still, and a dusty Jeep pulled off the shoulder. A woman stepped out with a smile. She said, "Looks like that truck's had enough. Mind if I stay a while?" She knew engines better than I did, had grease stains on her hands, and while we were beneath that fading light, I forgot all my broken plans. Like Arizona rain in July, you showed up when the earth was dry, out of nowhere, cool and wild, changing everything in a little while. I spent years chasing distant dreams, looking for what I thought I needed, but love rolled in with desert clouds, like Arizona rain. We found a roadside cafe open late, just past an old gas station sign. Talked until the waitress stacked the chairs and the stars took over the night. She told me she'd been running too, from a life that didn't fit. Funny how two strangers on a highway can find exactly what they missed. Like Arizona rain in July, you showed up when the earth was dry, out of nowhere, cool and wild, changing everything in a little while. I spent years chasing distant dreams, looking for what I thought I needed, but love rolled in with desert clouds, like Arizona rain. The next morning brought a thunderstorm, dark clouds drifting across the plain. She laughed and pointed at the horizon, said, "Guess somebody knows our names." And for the first time in a long, long while, I wasn't in a hurry to leave. Like Arizona rain in July, you turned a dead-end road into a new life, a broken truck into a story, and a lonely heart into something alive. Now every summer when the monsoons roll and thunder echoes through the canyons again, I thank the heavens for that desert road and the day you came, like Arizona rain. Yeah, some blessings don't fall twice, but one good storm can change your life. There's a wooden bench at mile 42 along an old Wyoming trail with a mountain view. It ain't on any map you'll find in a tourist stand, just a place beside the pines where the wildflowers still dance. I first saw it one September after 14 hours on the road, hauling cattle through the bighorns with a heavy load. The sun was dropping low, painting gold across the sky, and carved into the back were words that caught my eye. If you're tired, sit a while. A year went by before I passed that way again. This time after losing my brother, my closest friend. The world felt colder than the snow building on the peaks, and grief had stolen every answer I was trying to seek. So I pulled over by that bench as evening settled in, found a notebook in a weatherproof box tucked underneath it then, filled with notes from strangers passing through the years, written in faded ink, stained by rain and tears. At the bench at mile 42, people leave pieces of the truth, a prayer, a memory, a goodbye, a reason to keep moving through the night. Some roads are lonely, that's for sure. Some wounds take longer to endure, but hope keeps showing up somehow at the bench at mile 42. One note came from a trucker who beat cancer in the spring. Another from a young girl learning what forgiveness means. A widow wrote about her husband and the stars he loved to see, and every page somehow felt like it was speaking straight to me. I sat there till the moon rose high above the mountain line, reading stories from strangers who had survived their hardest times. Then I took my pen and wrote my brother's name inside. For the first time since he left, I didn't feel alone that night. At the bench at mile 42, people leave pieces of the truth, a prayer, a memory, a goodbye, a reason to keep moving through the night. Some roads are lonely, that's for sure. Some wounds take longer to endure, but hope keeps showing up somehow at the bench at mile 42. Nobody knows who built it there or who first placed that notebook down, but sometimes the best things in this world appear without a sound. Not every hero wears a badge, not every gift has a name. Sometimes healing starts with strangers who walk through the same pain. Now
How every fall I stop again and add another page with a pen, watching the sunset fade beyond the blue. And when life gets heavy, when the answers disappear, I remember all those voices that I found out there, and how a simple wooden bench helped carry people through. Yeah, hope still waits beside the pines at the bench at mile 42.
There's a pawn shop on the edge of Tulsa by the railroad line, where old guitars and wedding rings wait to outrun harder times. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, killing time on my lunch break, I walked inside that dusty room just to get out of the rain. Behind a shelf of hunting boots and yellowed photographs hung a battered violin with a crack across its back. A handwritten tag beneath it read, "Not for sale today." And something about that little note made me stop and stay. The owner was an old man named Charlie Reed, who'd worked that count of 40 years, maybe more than he believed. I asked him why that violin never seemed to leave the wall. He smiled and poured us both some coffee. Then he told me it all. Back in '87, when the oil fields went bust, a young father brought it in because he had to feed his son. Said he'd buy it back someday when life got back on track. But the years kept moving forward and he never made it back. So the violin in the pawn shop waits like a promise frozen in time and space, for a hand that remembers every note it knew, for a dream that never quite made it through. Some things are worth more than money can say, more than a price tag fading away. And every scar in that old wood sings of the lives we carry in little things. A month later, Charlie called me out of the blue. Said, "You ain't gonna believe who's standing here wanting news." An old man with silver hair and hands worn thin with age had walked into the shop asking about that very case. He said, "My daddy used to play that fiddle every night till hard times took it from him. When I was just a child, he passed before he got it back, but he spoke about it still, and I promised if I found it, I'd bring it home for him." Now the violin from the pawn shop sings in a house where grandchildren gather and dream. Its melody carries across the room like a voice returning after years of silence too. Some things are worth more than money
money can say, more than a lifetime drifting away. And every scar in that old wood sings of the lives we carry in little things. That night the family gathered on the porch under Oklahoma stars, and for the first time in 40 years they heard their grandfather's song. Not from a record or a story told, but from strings alive once more. And every note seemed to open up a long-forgotten door. Yeah, the violin from the pawn shop came home after decades wandering alone, and the music filled the spaces time had left behind. Now when the evening settles down and the crickets start their choir, that old fiddle tells a story that survives every fire. 'Cause love don't disappear with years, and dreams don't always die. Sometimes they just wait patiently for the right hands to arrive.
Met her at exit 17 on a Sunday morning drive at a roadside farmer's market just outside of Caroline. She was selling jars of honey from her granddad's old beef farm, with sunlight in her brown hair and wildflowers in her arms. I stopped to buy a mason jar and head on down the road, but we got to talking about the weather and the places we called home. An hour slipped away like dust drifting through the breeze, and somehow that little roadside stand felt like where I was meant to be. The next week I came back again, pretending I needed more honey stacked up in my kitchen from the visits before. She laughed and called me out on it, said you ain't hard to read, and then handed me a lemonade and pulled up a chair for me. By August we were dancing at the county fair at night, beneath the string of colored bows glowing soft and bright. The band played an old two-step while stars filled up the sky, and I knew right then I didn't want another goodbye. She feels like Sunday morning at exit 17, like a place you've never seen, but somehow always dreamed. Like the first warm sun after a week of pouring rain, like finding your way home without knowing you were lost along the way. She ain't fireworks or a runaway train, she's a steady kind of love that stays, and every day with her still feels like Sunday morning at exit 17. Now there's a porch swing by the farmhouse where we watch the evening fade, and a little girl who runs around the yard chasing butterflies all day. The honey stand still opens every weekend in the spring, and folks still stop to buy a jar and hear the old bees sing. Sometimes I'll catch her smiling when she thinks I'm not aware, and I beautiful as that first morning there. Funny how a simple stop can change a whole life's course, like turning down a road you almost passed before. She feels like Sunday morning at exit 17, like a place you've never seen, but somehow always dreamed. Like the first warm sun after a week of pouring rain, like finding your way home without knowing you were lost along the way. She ain't fireworks or a runaway train. She's a steady kind of love that stays. And every day with her still feels like Sunday morning at exit 17. People talk about forever like it's some impossible thing, but forever's just 1,000 little moments in between. A cup of coffee on the porch, her hand reaching for mine. The ordinary things that make a life shine. Yeah, she feels like Sunday morning at exit 17, like the sweetest little blessing I never saw coming. Like a song the radio plays exactly when you need a reminder that the best things arrive quietly. She ain't fireworks or a runaway train. She's the steady kind of love that stays. And after all these years, she still feels like Sunday morning at exit 17.
There's an old brass key above the kitchen door, hanging from a crooked nail since '74. Most folks never notice when they walk inside, but Grandpa said that key saved our lives. Back when Kentucky coal jobs disappeared and hard times settled in for years, bills piled high and hope ran low, like winter snow along the road. One December night a stranger knocked, cold rain dripping from his coat. Said his truck broke down beyond the ridge and nowhere else was open. Grandma fed him beans and cornbread. Grandpa gave him a place to stay. Before he left the next morning, he quietly handed them that key. That key above the door reminds us you never know what kindness starts. One small act can change a lifetime, leave a mark upon a heart. When you're down to almost nothing and the world feels cold and far, sometimes grace shows up uninvited
light where darkness was. A month later, Grandpa lost his job and thought he'd have to leave the land. But then a letter came from Lexington, signed by the same stranger's hand. He owned a growing hardware company, needed someone he could trust. Said a man who helps a stranger in the rain is the kind of man I want. That key above the door reminds us you never know what kindness starts. One small act can change a lifetime, leave a mark upon a heart. When you're down to almost nothing and the world feels cold and far, sometimes grace shows up uninvited, a light where darkness was. Now every Christmas Eve we gather, kids and grandkids packed inside, and Grandpa's story gets retold. The snow drifts past the window light. That old brass key still catches candle glow, like a blessing frozen in time. Yeah, that key above the door reminds us the richest things can't be bought. A warm meal, an open doorway, and helping hands when hope is lost. Keep spinning faster, but some truths never get too old. You never know which simple kindness might come back 100-fold. So we leave that key right where it's been, above the door for all to see. A reminder that a stranger once arrived and changed our family. On a gravel road in northern Montana, where the winters cut like glass, there stood a one-room general store that somehow still managed to last. The sign was faded, the floorboards grown, the coffee pot stayed warm, and folks stopped in for more than feed whenever there was a storm. Oh, Miss Evelyn ran the place since 1979. She knew every kid, every ranch, every hard and troubled time. But what folks talked about the most was a rusty iron key hanging from a nail above the door for everybody to see. Nobody locked their houses much back when the town was young, but times changed like the weather, and trust grew harder to come by. Still that key stayed hanging there through every passing year, and if you asked Miss Evelyn why, she'd smile and say it's here. For the day somebody needs it more than pride will let them say. For the day a soul gets stranded and can't find another way, then she'd pour another coffee and go back to her routine, leaving folks to wonder what she really meant. That's the key above the door, for the lost and the worn, for the hearts carrying burdens they weren't meant to carry alone. When the road gets dark and lonely, when hope gets hard to find, there's still a place in this world where somebody leaves a light behind. Then came the blizzard of '08, the worst anybody knew. Wide walls of snow swallowed fences, trucks, and every familiar view. A ranch hand named Miguel got caught 30 miles from town. His engine quit, his radio died, and the temperature kept dropping down. By pure luck, he found the store near midnight in the storm. The windows dark, the streets deserted, not another soul around. But there beside the entrance, hanging where it always had been, was that rusty iron key and a note tucked underneath. It said, if you're reading this tonight, come inside and get warm. There's soup in the freezer, blankets in the back room. Pay it forward when you can. That's the key above the door, for the lost and the worn, for the hearts carrying burdens they weren't meant to carry alone. When the road gets dark and lonely, when hope gets hard to find, there's still a place in this world where somebody leaves a light behind. The next spring folks gathered around and asked Miss Evelyn why. She said, my daddy taught me something before the day he died. He said, kindness ain't kindness if it waits for recognition. The best things people do are usually done unseen. Now the key above the door still hangs where it hung before, and travelers tell stories about what that little town stands for. Not the mountains or the cattle, not the rivers running wide, but the simple faith that somebody will help you through the night. Yeah, the key above the door still leaves a light behind. Rode into Cedar Creek at 10:30 with a rusted duffel bag and a past full of sin. The church bell rang through the Alabama air like it still remembered a boy who grew up there. Mama's porch light glowed at the end of the lane. Same white swing, same window pane. I stood in the gravel with my boots in the dust, wondering if this town still had room for gone chasing city neon signs, trading quiet sunsets for overtime. Lost a good woman somewhere along the way. Missed birthdays and Christmas Day. Daddy's old toolbox sat beside the barn, covered in rust but still holding strong. That's when I learned what I'd been running from. A man ain't rich if he's got no one. I'm back to Cedar Creek, back where the river bends, back to the front porch nights and my oldest friends, back where the stars still shine without the city lights, back to the roots I left behind. I thought freedom lived somewhere far away, down endless highways I could never stay. But every road I took led me to see home was waiting back in Cedar Creek for me. Now the wheat fields dance in the evening wind, and the boy I was is alive again. Mama laughs while the coffee brews, talking about all the things I used to do. The scars are there, but they don't define every wrong turn shaped this life of mine. And when the sun drops low beyond the trees, I finally feel a little peace. I'm back to Cedar Creek, back where the river bends, back to the front porch nights and my oldest friends, back where the stars still shine without the city lights, back to the roots I left behind. I thought freedom lived somewhere far away, down endless highways I could never stay. But every road I took led me to see home was waiting back in Cedar Creek for me. The miles don't disappear, they become part of your soul. Every broken mile marker helped me find the road. And the man looking back in that old truck glass ain't the same young fool from the past. I'm back to Cedar Creek, where the church bells ring, where the river keeps telling the same sweet thing, where forgiveness grows like summer rain, washing years of hurt away. I spent a lifetime searching for what I couldn't see. Turns out home was the thing that rescued me. And under these Alabama stars tonight, I'm finally where my heart belongs. Morning fog was hanging low on the Blue Ridge line, and Old red barn stood crooked where we spent our younger time. I rode through town on Highway 221, past the diner by the courthouse where my story had begun. Mama's porch light faded in my rear view years ago, chasing bigger dreams through cities that never felt like home. I traded mountain sunsets for a skyline made of steel, but every mile I wandered left a wound that wouldn't heal. I worked the night shift winters in the cold Tennessee rain, carried more regrets than dollars, riding freight trains through the pain. Then a letter from my brother showed up worn, stained with age. Said, "Dad still leaves your fishing pole beside the river every day." I stopped beside an overlook as daylight slipped away, watched the mountains turn to shadows, and I heard my conscience say, "Some roads are meant for leaving, some are meant to bring you back." And I finally turned the wheel toward the life I used to have. I'm coming back to the Blue Ridge Hills, to the church bells ringing and the whippoorwills, to the front porch stories and the river bend, where the hard times broke me and the healing began. Every wrong turn led me where I needed to go, through the storm, through the heartache, through the winding roads. Now the mountains call my name like they always will. I'm coming back, I'm coming back to the Blue Ridge Hills. Dad was standing by the mailbox when I pulled into the drive, a little older, a little slower, but the fire was still alive. He didn't say much when he hugged me in the fading evening light. Some things don't need explaining when you've been gone half your life. Mama set an extra plate and laughed the way she used to do. The radio's playing old songs drifting through the room, and for the first time in forever I felt the weight release, like the mountains wrapped around me and handed back my peace. I'm coming back to the Blue Ridge Hills, to the church bells ringing and the whippoorwills, to the front porch stories and the river bend, where the hard times broke me and the healing began. Every wrong turn led me where I needed to go, through the storm, through the heartache, through the winding roads. Now the mountains call my name like they always will. I'm coming back, I'm coming back to the Blue Ridge Hills. You can spend your whole life running from the boy you used to be, but the roots beneath your footsteps grow deeper than you see. And when the world gets heavy and the highway loses light, home is more than a place, it's the reason you survive. I'm finally back in the Blue Ridge Hills,
where the sunrise paints the valleys and the time stands still, with my family beside me and the river rolling slow. There's a kind of peace you'll never find out on your own. Every long road brought me to this front porch view, to the memories I left and the dreams that came true. Now these mountains hold my heart like they always will. I'm finally home, I'm finally home in the Blue Ridge Hills.
There's a forgotten mining town tucked deep in Colorado hills, where the railway quit running and the clocks all learned to stand still. Most folks packed their lives in boxes when the silver dried away, but old Walter Green stayed behind and watched the years decay. Every evening at sundown, he'd walk the empty street, past the boarded up hotel and the church without a priest. Then he'd climb the ridge above town where the cold winds always blew, and light a lantern by the tracks like he'd done his whole life through. The story went that 40 years ago his young son disappeared on a snowstorm night in January, the worst they'd seen in years. The boy had left to catch a train and never made it there. Nobody found no final words, just questions in the mountain air. People call it foolish hope, a wound that wouldn't heal, but Walter never missed a night, no matter how he'd feel. Through blizzards, floods, and summer heat, through every passing year, the lantern kept on burning bright for someone who might appear. And the last lantern in Black Creek still shines where the old rails meet, like a promise made that never broke, like a prayer rising through the smoke. When the whole world says let go, some hearts refuse to lose their hope. So the last lantern in Black Creek burns for the one who never came home. Then one October evening, when the aspens turned to gold, a stranger stepped off a freight train looking tired, gray and old. He stood beneath that lantern light with tears upon his face and stared toward the silent town like he recognized the place. Walter heard the footsteps coming down the gravel road. At first he thought the mountain wind was playing tricks again, but when the stranger softly said, "Dad, it's finally me," 40 years of sorrow broke like rain into the sea. And the last lantern in Black Creek still shines where the old rails meet, like a promise made that never broke, like a prayer rising through the smoke. When the whole world
But every soul in that old town still talks about that autumn night when hope outlived the hands of time and faith outshined the dark. Now the lantern's gone from Black Creek, the tracks lie quiet in their sleep, but the legend travels mountain winds through every valley, ridge and stream, that sometimes love keeps waiting long after reason says it's done, and sometimes one small light can guide a lost heart safely home. Yes, sometimes one small light can guide a lost heart safely home.
In the corner of Gate 12 at Nashville International sat an old upright piano, worn smooth from years of travelers' hands. Businessmen, young dreamers, soldiers heading overseas would stop and play a song or two before disappearing with the breeze. Most folks walk right past it, chasing flights and deadlines fast, never knowing every scratch upon that wood belonged to someone's past. But every Tuesday just past noon, an old man took that seat and played melodies so beautiful the whole terminal grew still. Nobody knew his story much, except he wore a faded cap and carried a photograph folded in his jacket flap. One afternoon I missed my flight and wound up listening near when he started playing Amazing Grace. I noticed tears. After the crowd had drifted off, I finally asked his name. He smiled and said, "I'm Walter, music's why I came." Then he pointed to the photograph he'd carried all those years, a young woman at that same piano, smiling ear to ear. At the piano at Gate 12, time slows down for a little while. Strangers become stories, and sorrow learns to smile. Every note carries somebody, every chord recalls a name, and for a few sweet minutes we're all travelers just the same. He told me back in '89 his wife sang in the local bars before cancer took her voice and left silence where songs are. On her final day, she made him promise through the pain, don't let the music leave this world when I can't sing again. So every Tuesday for 20 years he'd come and keep that vow, playing her favorite songs for people rushing through somehow. And nobody realized the reason behind those melodies until a reporter shared the story nationwide one week. At the piano at Gate 12, time slows down for a little while. Strangers become stories, and sorrow learns to smile. Every note carries somebody, every chord recalls a name,
just the same. The next Tuesday something happened no one there could have planned. 100 people gathered round, singing softly hand in hand. Flight crews, kids and weary strangers filled the terminal with sound. And Walter sat there crying as his wife's favorite song echoed around. Now the piano at gate 12 still stands beneath those airport lights, and every Tuesday people gather before their flights take flight. Some come for the music, some come for the story told, but everyone leaves remembering that love can outlive growing old. Yeah, the piano at gate 12 still keeps her song alive.
Radio crackled just past midnight on Route 84 through New Mexico. My headlights painted silver lines across a desert no one seemed to know. I'd spent 10 years hauling freight trailers, sleeping more in truck stops than at home, watching birthdays through a phone screen, always somewhere down the road. That night a song came through the static, one my little daughter used to sing back when she was 5 years old. Thought I could do anything. I pulled over by an old gas station under a buzzing neon light, and for the first time in forever I sat alone and cried. That radio on Route 84 hit me harder than ever before, made me realize what all these miles had really cost me over time. You can chase a paycheck coast to coast, cross every state from south to north, but some things get left behind when your heart ain't where you are. By sunrise I was heading east toward Oklahoma and home again, past windmills turning in the distance, past towns I'd only passed through then. When I pulled into our gravel driveway, my daughter ran out through the yard. She was nearly 16 by that summer, and suddenly I saw how much I'd missed. That radio on Route 84 hit me harder than ever before, made me realize what all these miles had really cost me over time.
a paycheck, coast to coast, cross every state from south to north. But some things get left behind when your heart ain't where you are. Now I still drive, but not for weeks on end. Got a local route close to town. Sometimes success looks a whole lot different than the dreams you started out with. Yeah, that radio on Route 84 changed what I was living for. Turned a lonely highway into a sign, pointing me back to my life. Now every night when I pull in the drive and see that porch light shining warm, I thank God for one old country song and a radio on Route 84. If some roads take you far away, just to show you where you belong.
The doctor shook his head last April, said take it easy, slow things down. But my granddad just smiled and tipped his cap, looked out across that Oklahoma ground. 82 years in those same fields, watching seasons come and go. He said a man don't quit on the land he loves till it's time for the Lord to call him home. We planted corn beneath the rainy sky, like we'd done since I was 10. His hands were worn like old leather gloves, but they still knew where to begin. Every sunrise found him on that tractor, rolling slow through rows of green, teaching me lessons he never wrote down, in ways only farmers mean. Just one more harvest, one more fall, one more season hearing that meadowlark call, one more sunset painting gold on the plains, one more chance to thank God for the rain. He said, son, life grows fast, don't miss it all. Take time to love the people standing small beside you, and every word still echoes through my heart, like one more harvest before the dark. October came with amber fields waving, the biggest crop we'd seen in years. We worked side by side through the cool morning air, laughing louder than our fears. Then one November Sunday morning, he passed away in his favorite chair, with harvest dust still on his boots, and peace resting everywhere. Just one more harvest, one more fall, one more season hearing that meadowlark call. One more sunset painting gold on the plains, one more chance to thank God for the rain. He said, son, life grows fast, don't miss it all. Take time to love the people standing small beside you, and every word still echoes through my heart, like one more harvest before the dark. Now every spring, when the fields awaken and fresh green rises from the earth, I swear I see him right in those horizons, smiling at what his life was worth. Just one more harvest, that's all he asked. Not riches, not glory, just time that lasts. To watch the wheat bend beneath the sky, and hold the ones he loved nearby. Now I carry on where his story ends. Through every season the good Lord sends, and when the sunset settles on those plains, I thank him for one more harvest again.